So, and again, another post I was looking at the other day, you're talking about like the effects of caffeine on sleep. And I think
Hmm.
it's such an interesting concept because how many of us are doing what I'm doing and having 7 pints of coffee during the day and then being like, okay, sleep time. Ooh.
All right. So let's break down sleep just a little bit. So sleep is definitely something that I was actually listening to. I was actually listening to a really interesting podcast by Matthew Walker on the Rich Roll podcast. But if you can get a hold of his book on why we sleep, is really important. So I think sometimes, why we sleep. Like if you look the way he describes why we sleep, if you think about it, it doesn't actually make sense. Like if you think back when we're hunter and gatherers, we needed to go to sleep. We're actually putting ourselves in a very vulnerable situation, right?
Big
Like,
time, right?
we
Yeah.
could be attacked, we could be whatever it is, but we have to understand why we sleep. And I think understanding why we sleep is that restorative, we're restoring cells within our bodies. We're actually making sure that we are healing from certain things. We're actually making sure our immune
Mm.
system's working properly. The other thing is as well, when we look at the brain element, understanding how we process information and how we can actually help with our memories and things like that if we don't get into stage. So we've got 4 stages of sleep. The last stage is REM sleep, which is the deepest stage.
Hmm.
That's where we actually store, like we process information throughout the day and we can actually store it to a memory. I can actually, I don't need that. That's actually kind of useless. And it also helps with that, helping us feel alert, right? So we need to make sure
Mm.
that we're having enough sleep. Now, the latest research is saying that we need 7 to 9 hours of sleep, good quality sleep. So your 6.5 hours, maybe just chuck in an extra half an hour if you can. But it is really challenging when you can't
Mm.
sleep. I am an ex-insomniac myself, so I completely can relate to that. And I think it's kind of, if you are really tired, your body will allow you to sleep. But I think that, are you still functioning the best that you could possibly be functioning?
Exactly.
Like, are you putting yourself in a situation where you could burn out? Like, how's your body going? Like, we look at anti-aging elements within our body. Sleep is a massive element of getting enough sleep in there as well. So,
I hear you.
we've got.
Oh, I hear you.
So it's definitely a really important, really, really important, um, foundation to set our well-being on, right? Like I talk about the 3 pillars, which is exercise, sleep, and diet. And sleep has to be the foundation of that because you
Mm.
have to make sure that you're restoring your body. Otherwise, kind of everything goes out the window. Like your food choices go out the window, your exercise goes out the window. You just generally don't feel good. Um, so now let's talk about caffeine. So if you're not getting enough sleep, right? So if you're actually not getting your 7 to 9 hours of sleep, you're
Okay,
not
I'm not.
feeling
Yeah.
refreshed, you're not feeling alert. When you wake up feeling a bit groggy, what's the first thing you go to? I'll go and get some coffee. Like I'll get some caffeine and that'll help wake me up. And then I think it becomes into that habit of like, I'm feeling a little tired. Let's have a bit of coffee, bit of
Mm.
caffeine. Now it's really interesting. And I have these conversations all the time where someone's like, oh, I can drink 15 coffees a day. Legitimately, someone said I have 15 coffees a day. And this is actually coming from a conversation that I've actually had. I have 15 coffees a day and I can fall asleep at 7 and I'm completely fine. I'm like, well, how are you waking up? And they're like, I am so exhausted when I wake up after 12, 14 hours sleep. I just feel really crappy.
You're laying in bed with your heart going. Ga, 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 ga.
Yeah, but he's sleeping. Like he feels like he's asleep, right? So then
Right.
it goes back into the stages of sleep again. So caffeine can actually impact the different stages of sleep. So you might actually
Right.
get the first 2 stages. You might actually be feeling like you're asleep and
Mm-hmm.
actually not conscious of what's going on around you, but you're actually not really getting into the stage 3 and 4 of sleep, which is
Right.
actually going to help you feel alert. So, like, if you don't get into stage 4 sleep, and stage 3 sleep, you're not going to wake up feeling alert. You're going to wake up feeling groggy. So then the
Sure.
vicious cycle starts again. It's like, I'll just have some more caffeine. The other thing with caffeine, I think people, you drink your first cup of coffee and it kind of peaks after the first hour, right? Like you're
Yeah.
like, I am so happy. I can focus. I can feel colors. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're going with it. But I think that what we've also got to understand is understanding the half-life and quarter life of caffeine,
Mm-hmm.
which is like, it peaks at the first hour. After 6 hours, you've got a half-life. So you've still got 50% of that caffeine in your bloodstream 6 hours later. And then if you look at the 10 to 12-hour mark, you might have actually about a quarter, and it might have gone through your system, but you still might have a quarter
Right.
amount of that caffeine still in your system 10 to 12 hours later. So it's not saying that you can't ever have caffeine. It's just understanding it's still in your blood system and it's probably your bloodstream and it's probably impacting you getting good quality sleep. So you might be thinking, I'm asleep, but am I getting good quality sleep? Are you able to
Sure.
go through all the different stages multiple multiple times throughout the night.
Yeah, and if you're not getting REM sleep, like you say, you're not solidifying memories, and where that's in my
Hmm.
very basic understanding of anything that happens in the brain. But if you're working all day trying to remember everything, and you're not getting that like actual full on REM sleep, how are you meant to walk in tomorrow and someone's like, "Hey, did you do that thing? And did you reply to that email? Did you see that thing? Yesterday we talked about?" And just like, hmm, those all
And then
sound
let's add
familiar.
in, yeah, and then let's add in stress, right? Stress
Hmm.
also can make it really difficult for you to remember things as well. You don't store memory because you're in that fight or
Really?
flight response, right? You don't, like, when you're really stressed out, you actually can, like, especially in burnout, you can actually start becoming very, very forgetful because your brain is so preoccupied on what it thinks is really important.
Wow, wow,
So
and you
then,
don't
like,
even
add
know.
sleep deprivation in there, and it's like, oh well, there goes
And
my
then,
memory.
and then you're nice and anxious because you're stressed out about why you can't remember things, and then you're nice and
Yeah,
into that
yeah.
wonderful spiral.
I honestly, I remember I had a really bad bout of sleeping and I thought I was losing my mind because I couldn't remember. And I'm actually really good with memories. Like, I
Right,
can read a fact and I can tell you when that fact was written. I can tell you that name, like Herbert Freudenberger. There we
there it
go.
is.
1976. He coined the term burnout. My weird ass memory just remembered that stuff. I can read it once, remember it. But I remember, like, when I'm having that bad bout, I was just like, what's my last name? Oh, that's right. Maycock. Like, yeah, that sounds weird though. Like, I was like,
Is it with a Katie before it? Really?
you know what I mean? Like, it is
I
kind of
do.
terrifying, and it's, like, I remember, I was doing a course. I didn't rock up to the course on time, and I'm usually very punctual. And I was just like, because I thought the course was like later in the day or the next day, and it wasn't. I just completely missed it. So yeah, it's terrifying.
I think what's so interesting from talking to you is how many little things, right, quote unquote, how many of the little things can end up very suddenly piling up and getting to a point where, like you say, burnout's happened, or you're just suddenly, you're not quite at burnout, but you're just beyond stressed and can't get your head around why, because maybe a couple of things have fallen off the back of the truck. I'm not exercising quite as much because I'm real busy, and because I'm not exercising, I will have pizza. Go for it. I'm going to have some pizza. And now I'm waking up a little greasy. I didn't sleep too good last night because I haven't had that beautiful exercise, and I haven't got the good veg in my diet. Instead, I've just got the
Hmm.
the, the most important food group, cheese. But
Or
but
caffeine for some people, right?
well, exactly. Oh, pizza. No, pizza coffee though. Hello, now we're talking. But it's that must be so easy to happen to people. Like you're fine, you're working, very, very hard. You are quite stressed. A couple of things fall off, or a couple of extra stresses get added on. Suddenly, all of those things. It's very much straw that breaks the camel's back, kind of out of nowhere. So it sounds like it creeps up on you. It sounds like it creeps up and it happens out of nowhere.
It does. It can feel that way for sure. I remember when I've burnt out twice in my life. The first
Okay.
time I was completely shocked by it. I was just like, I was like 26. Was I 20? I was 25, 26, and I'd worked really, really hard. It was my first recruitment job, and I went on holidays. And that holiday, the first 4 days, I couldn't get out of bed. Like, I was just really, really sick those first 4 days. And I was like, oh, shaking it out of my system. I remember thinking, it's like, I haven't slept much this year. I'm just catching up from like a year of not sleeping.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
my
how the body
logic, like,
works. Yeah.
I had a degree in physiology at this stage. I should have known freaking better. But at 20, I might have been 24 actually at that stage. So at that time, I was like, all right, cool. And then I just progressively got sicker after that holiday. Like, I ended
No.
up getting digestive issues. I remember waking up and my left hand was 3 times the size of itself because it was just randomly swollen from literally nothing. And cold cells across my face, and my knees and my hips and all my joints were really swollen that I could barely walk up and down stairs. And I remember just thinking, I must have the most horrific, like, bug in my body, or I must have like this really like big disease. And I spent I'm not kidding you not, I spent $30,000 trying to figure out what was wrong with me, and I was just burnt out. I just had no
Wow.
idea what was wrong with
Wow.
me. And so it took me 8 months to recover from the first time, and then the second time I knew exactly what I was doing and was like, you learned nothing the first time around, you better learn something this time around. And I did the same thing, and then I was out for a year. It took me a
Wow.
year to really get back to um just back to feeling human, like back to
And
feeling normal.
is that a year of not working? Is that a year of coming back to work, working in a different place? Like, what does
Yeah.
that mean for people? Because recognizing that you have burnt out, I guess the scariest thing is like, what do I do now?
What Yeah. So I think for me, I think I just pushed it a little too far. The second time was a little bit of a bit too extreme. So I ended up leaving the recruitment industry. I worked. I ended up working at a vitamin shop because that was all I could. It was like it
Healthy?
didn't. It was, yeah, but it also I didn't have to think. Like, it
Yeah.
was just one of those, like, rock up, leave. I didn't have to, like, with recruitment, you're, like, always thinking, and sales, you're always worrying, you're always doing stuff, right? So I worked there for about a year and a half. Oh, a year, no, a year. I worked there for
Mm,
about a year, and then I finally figured out that, sleeping was a thing that was really important, making sure that I got, and at this point in time, it was actually don't exercise 6 days a week for an hour and a half. Actually, go 4 days a week and maybe only train for 45 minutes rather than
sure.
trying to do it all. Um, you know, I tried multiple different diets on myself. Like, I guinea pigged all these different diets on myself to figure out what was the best, which was helping me the most.
Right.
And actually, the biggest thing that I had to learn was I have to manage my stress. How do I manage my stress? What does stress look like to me? How do I
Mm,
know when I'm not coping with my stress? And actually coming up with that self-awareness piece for me, which was understanding here are the warning signs that I'm starting to get a little bit stressed out, because for me, I've
mm,
always used stress as a fuel to actually drive me forward.
yeah.
So I had to actually understand, yeah, like I had to understand what are some of the warning signs there. And I think that everyone needs to be able to do that. So if you've burnt out, the first thing that you need to do is, if you're employed, talk to your manager, right? Talk to your
Yeah.
manager going, hey, I've really burnt out. I might need some time off. And maybe you need to actually have, I encourage organizations to have a re-entry into the business when they've burnt out as well. So actually
That's
have
the thing,
something
right?
in there as well.
Because
Um,
because how many people come back from burnout and in 2 weeks, first 2 weeks, don't worry, Katie, you take it easy. I know it got all too much. And then, oh, could you just do this thing? No. Okay, don't worry, Katie. Don't worry, Katie. 3 weeks in, you're just back doing what you were doing.
yeah, yeah,
2 weeks
yeah.
in, a day, whatever, right?
And that's the biggest thing, right? It's okay to take that break, and I think we're talking about this in the webinar that we did, because I think at that time Bumble had just come out saying we're
Mm,
giving out everyone in our 700 staff like a week off, and that's going to resolve burnout. It's like, well, maybe that's what they need, but what are the actual reasons why these people are burning out? So when you take that time out, understood how you got there, what are the
mhm,
things that you need to change? What boundaries do you need to put in place? What kind of conversations do you need to have with your manager going, hey, these are the reasons why I burnt out. These are the things that I know I can handle. And
mhm.
having an open conversation with your manager, and having that manager having the skills to actually have that conversation back, is also very important for organizations, right?
But then that's why it has to come from a top down, because it's not just
Mhm.
about having the conversation across the business, but it's also making
Mhm.
sure that you're facilitating all those different levels of manager. And if you're at
Mhm.
the very top, also facilitating yourself, but to make sure that you have the skills to help people out. Like, and
Yeah.
this isn't a case of when everyone gets close to burnout, they're all going to get the jaw-shaped cold sore. So keep an eye out. You see the cold sore, that's the thing. Then you got to go and do this. Everybody's different. It's mental health, right? You
Yeah.
can't, it's not a cookie cutter thing. You can't say, I might get extremely angry, whereas the next person gets extremely depressed, and and we're all going through exactly the same thing. So
Yeah.
you need to come down so you can facilitate your team to have the
You need
skills
to
to deal with it.
understand it, right? Like, I think that, in all honesty, I think that managers and leaders need to really understand how to stress, not just burnout, but stress, because stress is the precursor to burnout, right?
Right.
How can we actually see stress within our teams? How can we
Mm.
actually understand? And there's also, let's transition like a funky word in here, pressure. It's like, pressure's really good because, like, we need to, like, put
Love
pressure on
pressure.
our team to, like, right? But
That's
when
how
does that
diamonds are made,
pressure
right?
exactly, right? But when pressure is too much, you actually lean into that, burnout, that stress, that overwhelming, that, not sleeping and not focusing, and that kind of element. So understanding, you have to understand there's not one rule for everyone. So
Mm.
like, you might have one team member that can actually be put under a lot of pressure, and they can take they can take their stress, and they're completely fine with it. They have no health issues. They're always performing. There's nothing wrong with that. But you try to do the same thing with, Joe next door, and
Yeah.
Joe next door is just like, dude, I can't handle this.
Yeah. Right.
And they might work in a different way. And that's not to say they can't be as successful as somebody else. That's wrong to think of as well. But understanding how to nurture each individual person in your team and where they're
Mm.
at. Meet them where they're at, not where you need them to be.